Hello class, here are my responses to the Chapter 4 discussion questions. Okay, the first one. Now, for many of these questions, I've shortened the question to its essential components, or what I think that they are. So the first one, what should be the focal concerns when sentencing offenders? So that term, focal concerns, is the guiding theory that is said to have much influence over district attorneys and judges. How much that actually plays out in the courtroom is another question. But originally, these focal concerns concerned the offender's blameworthiness, or how culpable he or she is for the offense, the community safety that we can hope to achieve from sentencing, and then the constraints and consequences of a sentence. And so some sentences may be appealing, but for costs and constraints of prison bed availability and other issues dealing with that there may be a constraint on the ideal sentence. I should also add that when we're looking at what kind of sentence we should give out, age and prior record are some of our best indicators as to how likely the person is going to reoffend. And so prior record is one thing, but also age. If you give out a very long sentence, beyond a certain age, this will likely have a diminishing return for the offender and public safety. And so we have a lot of offenders that may have committed even violent offenses, and they are serving life in prison, and they are 65, 70 years old. They're very expensive. Their health is failing, and they committed their offense maybe 30, 40 years ago. And so one wonders about the ethics and the wisdom of doing something like that. Okay, the second question, essentially, I boiled down to, is rehabilitation for everyone? It seems to me, now some of this is based on fact, all of these, and some of this is based on my own opinion, but it would seem to me that if it's the case that the offender may not have been in this situation if not for his or her substance abuse, drug and alcohol abuse, then they seem like a likely candidate for rehabilitation programs. We know in the general community that these things can work so long as someone is open to change and they're really committed to it. However, on the other side of the spectrum, we do have violently sadistic offenders that should be punished without concerns for rehabilitation or deterring them in the future, else we will erode public trust in government. All right. Third question dealt with, should any position or person in the criminal justice system have greater say in the sentencing of offenders? So some key actors here are prosecutors, judges, and parole board members. Well, ever since going back to at least the early 1990s, with mandatory minimum sentences and sentencing guidelines, the prosecutors, the district attorneys, have had more weight in determining the sentence than any other actor in the criminal justice system. Yet my opinion is that judges should be brought back into the fold and have more influence over the sentence, simply because they have more experience. And that counts for a lot, even though they still are elected in many cases, which is a problem that we have. Being tough on crime is the way you have to go. And I'm not completely throwing out sentencing guidelines and pre-sentencing report, which is important, but those should be considerations and not legally binding like the sentencing guidelines are in many states, that the prosecutor determines that this is where it's going to be in the sentencing guidelines, we're going to go for this, and the judges really have a little leeway in deviating from that. If they do deviate from that, then they have to cite very clear and convincing mitigating or aggravating circumstances. Okay, and the fourth one, if you were a lawmaker, what factors would influence your vote on criminal sanctions? For me, it would be public safety should be prioritized for two major reasons. One, I think that protecting the innocent is often of greater moral value than limiting the severity of sanctions against the guilty. And two, the economic cost of crime can be as much, if not more, than the cost of criminal sanctions. And so for reasons of public safety and for reasons of economics, I think that public safety really should be the #1 priority when we're considering how severe the criminal sanction, the sentence should be. And then finally, how should we handle cases of wrongful conviction? Now, this is a blight on the entire criminal justice system. When this happens, we want to limit this as much as we can, but it does happen, and sometimes this is as a result of legal malpractice or just deliberate indifference or negligence on the part of district attorneys and other people in the court. And so what I think should happen, there should certainly be cash compensation, which can happen, followed, I think, by a temporary suspension of the DA and possibly the judge that was involved in the case until an independent investigation, preferably from outside the state, from somewhere else, can be done to discover if there was in fact any legal negligence or legal malpractice going on. Okay, well, those are my thoughts on some of those discussion questions, and hopefully this was helpful. Until next time, bye-bye.